I like this question. What's the most common moment that forces IT leaders to rethink their operating model?
So this is a fantastic question. When we start thinking about rethinking our operating model in IT, it generally has to do with the point where IT doesn't know what they should be working on and why, right? At every change in maturity on the management side of things in the operational relationship. If IT doesn't know what it should be working on and why, then we have an issue that needs more structure, right? Working with an organization right now where I ask that direct question, and they have a fairly mature development team. What if you have one additional hour today and you had nothing to do, but you were going to do that, spend that hour working on something? Would you know what you should work on next and why? And they didn't know. They're like, well, I just pick something I can get done. Is it, for some organization, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad answer. In this organization, there is a sense of if I just work on what could get done, I may end up wasting time on something that's low priority because I have so many things to be done.
Mhm.
And as much as the business likes to think that everything's important and everything must be done right now, if you sit them in a room and ask them to stack rank things, you will find that there are some things that aren't that important. And there
Mhm.
are some things that really are. And so in that scenario, this question of does my IT team know what they ought to be working on next and why, um, is a common moment where we rethink our approach to our operating model. That operating model might be, no, I don't know what I should be working on next and why, because I'm a one-man team and I have 9 different things and 10 different people asking me for these 9
Mhm.
different things. And so I've got to figure that out. And part of the problem in that is my capacity. And it doesn't have to do with priority, it has to do with my ability to add value with my time. And so maybe the operating model becomes, all right, we need somebody else
Mhm.
to add to our team. Maybe it's a look, I can write code, but this infrastructure thing, we're talking about setting up servers, we're talking about creating a network and this, that, and the other. That's not my skill set. And if that's not your skill set, then now we have a change in our operating model, right?
Mhm.
And then as we start talking about capacity, things grow. And again, you ask that, do we know what we should be working on next and why? And so that becomes a key part of the conversation. That's at least a question I like to ask that gets me somewhere when I start
Yeah.
figuring out what should be our operating model.
So along those lines, if you go into an organization and they're like, which you do often, right? And it's like, hey man, I don't know if our IT team is functioning, but I know we have like some dysfunction, right? Within here of like, we've been working on an implementation for 3 years. We're not able to do all of these different things. Let's see what's going on here. What are going to be some main like red flags that you see? And then I'll get to our other question here in the comments too.
Yeah. So main red flags that I see in this kind of conversation of what are we doing here? What ought we be doing is the growth of the shadow IT organization in the business, right? When you're having disjointed conversations where you're saying, I built this thing and the business says, I didn't want that, I bought this instead, so go do that. If that conversation is sideways, that's a real red flag, right? If the business isn't talking to IT and IT isn't talking to the business on how these things come together, that's a red flag, right? Are we not doing this? Are we not having this conversation? Do we not have a list of things to do that are prioritized by the business? That's an interesting scenario to be in, and it's more common than you think.